full of information you don't want to miss. A veteran show for all veterans. Welcome, Major Andrew White, retired, and Marine helicopter pilot Chuck. Hey.
Hoorah! And welcome to another edition of Kilroy's Conversation. Man, we got a fun show today. A lot of good stuff to talk about.
Lots and lots of good stuff.
Yeah, we had some good spirited debate. Too bad the cameras weren't rolling pre-show.
We could have had some fun with that.
We could have had a little bit of fun with that.
Had a little bit of fun with that.
But, yeah, today's show, we're going to be talking, it is one of our favorite topics, college football. And I'll tell you what, the Commanders-in-Chief Trophy is looking like it could be
pretty interesting.
Very interesting. A lot of possible scenarios. Arlington, Texas on November 6th could be.
Be there or be square.
Could be some interesting, very interesting results.
The outcome of the game is extremely important.
Very important for multiple reasons. It could have bowl implications. Think about that.
Oh, yeah?
It could have very big bowl implications.
Big-time bowl implications. We're going to run down everybody's bowl chances this year.
Yeah. Well,
and I forgot, we got to give a little shout-out to our boy Gus Carbacus and the Teed Up for the Troops golf tournament. We'll talk about that real shortly.
Yeah. I love Teed Up for Troops. Done a lot of stuff with them
Surprised
in the past.
you weren't out there playing.
I had one of those JOB commitments that day.
You got to get your priorities.
I understand. Unfortunately, my boss did not understand that, there was a golf tournament going on, but they actually expected me to get my job done that day. So had to take one for the team. Works out
that way. Took one for the team. I represented out there, so it was good.
There we go.
I was the MC of the event, and it was a lot of fun.
Yep. Teed Up for Troops always does a great job. I've been at their event many times here in Dallas on Veterans Day. Great event. Yep. Tom Watson's been out there many times. Really like hanging out with Tom Watson.
Teed Up for the Troops has been here?
Oh, yeah. They come out Veterans Day over at Bentry here in Dallas. Oh, yes.
That's interesting because they told me this was their first golf tournament.
They co-sponsor.
So this is their first standalone.
Yes.
So we'll see if they call me. I was a little surprised. Our boy Mike Brower and I had a conversation, and I was like, man, I'm kind of, turnout should have been a little bit bigger. But
you know what? We've noticed that throughout, the COVID factor is still there, keeping some people.
Are you kidding me? The Arlie Ermy golf tournament sells out every year. Well, shooting for another sellout and an even bigger year this
gunny.
Year.
What do you expect?
It is the gunny.
That kind of brings a little
oomph to the table.
Yeah, you kind of sort of know it. That's one that, yeah.
And we kind of sort of have a lot of fun.
Yeah, we do. It's a good time. It is a very good time, and great people that show up to that every year.
Oh, my gosh, yeah. Got to meet Flo Grobert, I believe is how you pronounce it.
At this one or at our...
At this one.
Right.
Yeah. And
is he here in Dallas now?
Yeah, he just moved. He is. Yes, he is. He is now a resident of America's team, which is really interesting because I told him that now that he has moved here, we're going to get him another shirt because he was wearing a Bears shirt.
I was going to say, I don't think he's a true Texas fan.
No, he is not.
I've been
but we'll fix that.
We'll change that.
We'll fix that. He was out there with our friend Sal, so it was pretty cool.
Sal's here also as well, correct?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Sal
the hub.
He's becoming a pretty heavy golfer, and for those who are not up on our name-dropping, these are two Medal of Honor recipients, both excellent guys, very humble guys, great guys, and they would not appreciate us name-dropping with them. Yeah. So what can I say?
With the one name drop we can't do is because, the whole reason they're here is because of our good buddy Mike Brower.
Absolutely.
Let's just give it.
Mike just sucks them in.
He is the Godfather.
He is the Godfather.
That's pretty much it. If you've ever met Mike Brower, the Godfather is about the best way to describe him.
Yep, he is the Godfather.
So, Mike, if you're out there, we love you, buddy.
And if you're not listening, what is your major malfunction?
So, anyway, let's get back to one of our favorite topics in sports and all that is college football. Man, I'll tell you what, it has been the service academies are doing well.
Doing very well. 2 out of 3 are doing well. And that's At best, that's where it is.
Because you know what? Navy at first looked like they didn't even belong on the playing field the first 2 weeks of the season. But I'll tell you what. I went to the Houston game, down there to watch Navy play Houston. They played them tight. The score was not really reflective of the game. It's
28-20. It's a one-score game.
But you know what? Navy had them all the way to the very, very end.
Navy plays. All of the service academies play hard. These kids get out there, and they literally play for love of the game. It is very rare when one goes to the NFL.
And then you watch the Navy versus SMU game this past weekend. I'll tell you what. Navy gave SMU every bit it could handle. If you were the odds makers and betting on that game.
Oh, yeah. The odds makers lost a lot of money on that.
Yeah, they were like.
SMU did not cover in that game.
No, and SMU should have, by all predictions, should have steamrolled them. No.
Oh, yeah.
Navy gave SMU all it could handle and then some. I mean, that was a long victory ride home back from that game where the coach was like, guys, what the heck happened here? We just got our butts whooped. We were one play difference away from losing a very embarrassing game in the books.
Yep.
Embarrassing. I'm not saying losing Navy is a bad thing. It's just those two teams should not have been that equal on the field.
Well, they're not, but that goes back to so one of the things that all the service academies do, and there is an element, and I've heard this discussion, and a lot of it is a point of pride that they won't move out of D1 football, even though they're
borderline.
They're borderline from playing D1 football. But keep in mind, they don't get the quality athletes that other schools do.
Skilled. They've got their athletes are just as quality.
Well, and what I was going to say is when you're talking about, you're talking about the 6'2" to 6'5" quarterbacks that are weighing 200 to 240 pounds. You're talking about linemen that are upwards of 300 pounds and larger.
Agreed.
You're not going to get kids with that kind of size. Now, what you are going to get are some incredibly talented 5'9" quarterbacks that are fast, that are elusive, that can sling the rock just a little bit. The interesting thing is all the service academies run a variation of option football, but it's all pretty much running football.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you watch the games, they have almost 20 to 30 yards of passing, but 300-plus yards of rushing.
It's pretty crazy to watch.
And it's fun,
but what
too.
it is, it's very hard to prepare for when all of the teams in your conference throw the ball and you've got one team that wants to run it. And it's a team generally you think you're going to out-talent. So you wind up really not putting in the preparation you need to put in. And I understand it. There's only 12 games on the schedule. You're not going to spend more than 1/12 of your time getting ready for one offense.
Exactly. And here's the other thing, if you think about it. The other strategy these teams do by playing, that run option constantly, they control the clock, which also takes you out of your op tempo when you're playing that kind of football. I mean, I think that's one of the factors that got SMU all discombobulated because they could not take the field. Navy just grinds and grinds, just like Army and Air Force on the ground, and doesn't give you much time to correct any mistakes you make because by the time you get the ball, the quarter's almost over.
Yep.
They own the time of possession every single time they take the field.
Absolutely.
And that's a big factor, how to manage the clock when you're playing that type of game. But speaking of the clock, the calendar is ticking, and we're looking right now at the Commander's Trophy coming up.
Commander's Challenge.
Classic. Sorry, we're getting used to it. It's the first time, so we may goof it up a couple times. But, boy, is this going to be let's put it, it's going to be a slugfest.
So for those who haven't been paying attention, can you explain to our listeners what the Commander's Classic is?
The Commander's Classic is one of the series games between the service academies. It's a brand new series that the Army and Air Force have always played each other. Don't get us wrong, but it's a special game where they've signed a contract with the city of Arlington, where for the next 2 years already, Air Force will be the home team this year. Army will be the home team on a neutral field, which is really cool. Now, granted, this is a great area because we have a large Army and a large Air Force presence in the DFW area, along with Service Academy alumni in there. All Service Academies are well represented in the DFW area, but Air Force and Army certainly make up a large percentage of that, and it is going to be a heck of a game. Both teams, Army's 5-1, Air Force
Army's 4-2,
4-2,
Air Force is 5-1. So they come in. These are clearly right now the class of the service academies.
Yep.
Air Force has already beaten Navy. So for Army has to win
in order to
be in contention for the Commander-in-Chief trophy.
Which could be interesting. If we have the Commander-in-Chief trophy, we can post that up there. This is the Service Academy trophy that gets passed down from academy to academy each year. But right now, the reigning champs are United States Military Academy at West Point. We are.
Unfortunately, Navy had a wonderful 8-10 year run.
Oh, 14.
Was it 14-year run?
14-year run.
Oh, Navy had some just great football teams, and of course, I am always a Navy fan. There's two big reasons for that. Navy is where we get our Marine officers, and my roommate at the basic school, the guy that I carry when we do carry the load, and we'll talk about that more in the spring, but is Don Woolly Bear Woollett, who was a 1980 graduate of the Naval Academy, and we lost him. And no.
Nope.
Now, Don was on the sailing team.
Did you know at the academy, every student has to
Do
play
a sport.
sport?
Yeah, they have to. They have to compete in a sport. He was on the sailing team. He was kind of lanky. It'd be the best way to describe him. He was a damn fine. He could have been a wide receiver. He was a damn fine Marine and a damn fine officer, and tragically was killed with 240 fellow Marines. Couple of sailors and 14 French soldiers in that cowardly bomb blast in Beirut, which many people will call the first shots in the War on Terror.
Yep, 100% agreed. Back to the academies over here. It is going to be a dogfight. I see this game.
Going to be a good game.
And when you have two teams that like to control the clock the way they do, that adds a whole new element to the game. Are we going to see some
turnovers
passing?
become critical?
But here's the one thing that almost never happens: penalties. These are some of the most disciplined teams out there. In fact, I think it was either last year or the year before when Army-Navy played. It was the first time that not any penalties were called in the game. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
They
piece of trivia.
Played a penalty-free game. Which is pretty.
Face it, pretty rare.
Pretty rare. It's like, why the refs even out here?
Yeah, really.
But it was a excellent game. But they've got some interesting matchups going on. I mean, if Air Force wins, they take the trophy home. I wonder, will the trophy be on hand for that purpose?
I don't know.
That's an interesting thing. They get to go out there and hoist that trophy. Now, I don't know. Do they do the who sings second at Air Force Army? The tradition. The winning team sings second, their school alma mater at Army Navy. That's what you play for. Did you know that?
Did not know that either.
That is what they play for, is to see who sings second.
So I was going to mention, and you can probably guess this, the trophy is a 3-sided trophy. You can see there are 3 footballs on it. In the center are the mascots of each team. The Army has a jackass. No comment. The Air Force has a falcon. Mm-hmm. And the Navy, for some reason, has a goat.
I was gonna ask you.
We haven't researched that. We need to research why the Navy mascot is a goat. But it is a goat. And okay, it's a goat. So anyway, but it also marks the years, and you can see it, that the victorious team, the team that takes home the Commander-in-Chief trophy, gets to put that little bronze plaque, and that means a great deal to those teams.
It does. It means, to them, that's the national championship trophy right there.
Yes.
To the service academies, to be that team, that's big.
Now,
All right.
can you name the last time one of the service academies played for the national title? Oh, this is going to be fun.
I want to say Navy during Roger Starbuck's days. But
Exactly correct.
I was going to go
1963 in the Cotton Bowl, facing my beloved Texas Longhorns. And Roger Staubach went down in defeat.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think they won it.
Behind the passing of oh, shoot. Doss. No, I can't remember his name.
That's good. Like I said, I had a feeling it was that the year that Roger won the Heisman?
It was Roger's Heisman winning season.
Which, you know, that's actually a curse.
Is it?
Yes. Most of the time, a team that has the Heisman Trophy winner does not win the national championship. Very rare. Very rare.
So there we have it.
We got that. So it is going to be fun and exciting. We're planning on being out there. We're working on the game. Chuck and I over here. Hopefully, we'll still be alive. We're dying with
Good
the
Lord.
Texas allergies. So we're having a good time over here. We're surviving. You know, hopefully, we'll be able to make it to the game.
Yes, we have plans to be at the game. We're working right now on the logistics and the details. We're going to invite our fans by. And one of the things, and we may as well start talking about this now, JP, Kathy, and the crew have always done a Veterans Day telethon.
Which has been awesome.
Andrew and I will be heavily involved with that this year. But one of the things we're going to be doing, we are going to be out at the game. Hopefully we're going to be tailgating in a location that people can find, and I've got to run the traps on that and see about getting set up. But we are going to be interviewing veterans at the game for them to kind of get a 5 to 15-minute opportunity to kind of talk about what Veterans Day means to them, talk about their time in the service, to give shout-outs to who we need to give shout-outs to. We're going to have that day, we're going to have several of the Gold Star family members zoom in and make an appearance. I don't think there is anybody who has sacrificed more than our Gold Star family members. No. And so we're going to focus on them. We're going to talk a lot about Veterans Day, the history behind Veterans Day. It's actually just a great story. So that's kind of what we're going to do. But we're going to be at the game. It is going to be a lot of fun. So join us if you can and get tickets now, because my understanding is this game is coming very close to selling out.
Which should be interesting because it's being played at what is normally a traditional baseball field. Although
Globe Life Park.
I don't know if they've actually played baseball at that stadium yet now. I've been there a couple games.
You've been there for baseball.
Yeah, but
yes,
was that baseball that was played there? Because it did not look like it, you know, except for that one game that I went to. You know, usually
they have played football games in there already. This will not be the first football game there. In fact, I think the first game they had was a football game.
Was it really?
And I know that they played arena football or whatever it was.
That was at the park across the street, which I was at, by the way. I will tell you right now, great veteran discount if you want to. If you've not been to it, the Van Gogh exhibit at Globe Life Park, pretty awesome. Had to go there with the wife over the weekend. You know, sometimes you got to do what you got to do.
Taking another one for the team.
Taking one for the team.
Yep.
You know, but it was pretty cool. You know, Van Gogh, I have to say, it was neat. You know, if you go there, they give a very generous veteran discount. So, highly encourage that. You know,
now I got to tell you, funny. We're going to tangent slightly as we're talking about veteran discounts. So we are in south of Boston, there's a very famous whaling city. We are in their whaling museum, which was actually a very impressive
Gloucester.
No, it wasn't Gloucester.
Glouster's
It's in Massachusetts somewhere. My wife is rolling her eyes right now.
Gloucester and you got Foster.
Now, it wasn't either one of those, but we are in the whaling museum. I tell you what, if it weren't for the cars in the parking lot, you'd think you were walking back into sailing days in Massachusetts. So my brother, because he always asks, he's cheap like me, do you do an active duty discount? And the girl said, yes. And he says, well, here's my ID. And she goes, how many people are with you? And we had a dozen people with us.
Right.
It's my sister and her husband and my nephew and my son and me and mom. And so we had the whole crew there. All of your family gets in for free.
Nice.
We were like, hey, we don't expect the whole thing to be Compton. They were like, nope, that's the deal. We want to honor our military.
Just like I told you where I grew up over, went to school in Rhode Island, red, white, and blue streets. Don't see that here in Texas, which is still a challenge to our mayors in those cities. I like to see some red, white, and blue streets for one of these veteran holidays coming up.
That's actually a really good idea. John Keating, if you're listening, I am going to bug you about this one.
A stripe down, because what they do in Brest, Rhode Island, and we've had it on the show, there's almost a 2-mile stretch where there's not a yellow line. It's red, white, and blue lines for the center street, and it's done every year on the 4th of July.
Very nice.
Repainted.
We have a Veterans Day community parade coming up.
I think it'd be pretty cool.
I
bet you if you were to call one of our big box commercial stores.
Oh, I'm not worried about that
I bet you
all.
they would be out there in force.
Speaking about the 82nd Airborne and Steve Mills from Lowe's, I guarantee you he'll come up with the paint.
They will come up with, between them, one or the other.
In fact, it may become such a challenge that we're going to have blocks that are done by different,
we
Lowe's,
know
Home Depot,
Sherman
Ace,
Williams. I am pretty sure
I'm
that
all about contests.
Someone will come up with some paint to fall off a truck somewhere and end up, if we get that approved.
Absolutely.
And why wouldn't you?
Absolutely.
Why wouldn't you do that?
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
It's a really cool time. It looks great, and who in the community won't appreciate it?
Surprisingly, a few.
They will, but you know what? They'll get over it.
Although I am very, very gratified to see they are, for years, this was the Frisco Community Parade.
Yep.
And now they are adding Veterans Day into the phrase. It's still the community parade. But it is important that we continue to recognize the service.
Absolutely.
And I want to figure out how to incorporate our first responders into all of that.
Absolutely. And we've said this since our 9/11 show. As far as I'm concerned, the first responders, they're the first ones to retaliate after 9/11.
Absolutely.
No question that, before the guys in green ever even showed up, the guys in blue were doing their job.
Doing their job.
Yep.
Doing their job.
Hats off to those guys always.
So we will continue, and we are building to the first weekend in December, because even if the Commander-in-Chief Trophy has been awarded and is awarded on November 6th, it's entirely possible, the way the math works out, that trophy is over, Air Force having already beaten Navy. The Army-Navy game may be the finest rivalry game in the nation.
Unquestionably the finest game in the nation, rivalry-wise. I don't care, OU, Texas, A&M, Alabama now, I guess maybe is going to build up. The ghost of Johnny Manziel will be showing up for years.
Yeah, they've been in the SEC for a decade. They're 2-8 against Bama, but you'd think they owned them.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, nothing against our beloved Aggies, but you'd think that they won the national championship on the way they're posting down there. They needed the win. They really did. I mean, no one needed a win more than A&M this weekend, because Their ego is being pretty bruised over the last couple weeks in college football.
You know, when you pay more money than anybody else to get a head football coach.
They can't. Nick Saban has in his contract that he's always the highest paid coach. So,
well, at the time.
For about a minute.
Yeah. But then you give that guy an extension before he's really earned it.
Question, how big of a house could A&M buy him after the victory at against Alabama?
What was funny was if he hadn't beaten Bama, they might have burned his house down because he was in all kinds of hot water.
Yeah. But, yeah, I'm sure the alumni took very good care of him on Sunday morning. And rightfully so. You know, he beat a top-ranked program.
You're only as good as your last win, although they're going to milk that for 2 or 3 seasons.
Oh, easy.
But, you know, it is what it is. Yeah. In the great world of college football. And then speaking of rivalries, Texas and Oklahoma played this weekend, and it was the highest scoring game in Red River War history.
Oh,
103 total points scored without overtime. The record was 98, but that needed 4 overtimes.
That was what, 2 years ago? Or?
2 years ago. Last year.
Last year or 2?
It was last year.
Yep.
Yeah, that was Sam Ellinger's senior swan song. Love me some Sam Ellinger, but I got to say, we took, and it was one of the things I'm going to talk about, and you've got to understand the Texas OU rivalry because it is truly a bitter, nasty rivalry.
Yes, it is.
They don't like each other.
Not at all.
Casey Thompson is our quarterback. Casey Thompson is Charles Thompson's son. Charles Thompson used to be the starting quarterback for OU. And they did a feature before the game of interviewing Charles Thompson and him talking about his feelings, and he's sitting there in a Longhorn shirt. He says, "What is it like for you? You know, you played at OU. You were one of the great all-time quarterbacks at OU." And I am all gas, no brakes, which is Coach Sark's tagline for the season. He loves him some Longhorns. Fact, Oklahoma didn't recruit Casey because they had a higher-ranked guy who had already committed. And then when he bolted, they came back to Casey and said, "Nah, I'm going to be a Longhorn." So this is a young man with great loyalty. He could have left at the beginning of the season. He had put 3 years into the program, sitting and learning behind Sam.
Right.
And he could have left and pouted and said, "You know what, I didn't get the starting job." It didn't take long. Casey has taken that team over. He has demonstrated some incredible leadership. He has handled it with great humility. Wonderful young man, 25% Kiowa Indian. So he is a true Native American.
There you go.
And we had this discussion because Sam Bradford's got a 16th Native American in him. But to be an actual member of a tribe, you have to hit certain numbers in all the tribes.
I can't remember what it is. I think it's...
Well, all the tribes use a different number. And, of course, and I'm glad that they are proud of that heritage.
Yep.
But I like bringing it up.
on that one day.
Pardon?
Native Americans in the military. That would be a fun show.
There have been some great ones.
100%.
Absolute great ones. One of them that I got to meet was Peter Mcdonald, who was one of the code talkers, Marine code talkers in World War II.
We have a few code talkers, I believe, here in the DFW area. Or you at least used to. I don't know if they're still around.
I was going to say, these gentlemen are all...
the originals, I think we lost the original one, the last of the originals a couple years ago.
Do not know.
Okay. With football, we've got the Armed Forces Bowl right now.
Talk about the Armed Forces Bowl right quick because we are super excited.
Army right now is the designated slated team for it.
So to explain right quick, every year there is a service academy team that's kind of
like an at-large bid, so to speak.
Yeah, kind of that's penciled into the Armed Forces Bowl. Now, if they get a better bowl bid, which means more moolah, they can go to that. They can opt out of that. So they're not tied to that game. Army is penciled in this year, and currently it is looking like Army and Boise State.
Which could be one heck of a good game.
Oh, my gosh. And one of the funnest things about the game, and I'm talking with, we are tight with one of the board members, and one of the things we really are going to push this year is to get everybody out early. The game is going to be on Wednesday the 22nd, so it's going to be midweek. It's going to be an evening game, 7 p.m. kickoff over at Amon Carter Stadium in Fort Worth. But starting at 4 o'clock, they will open the gates, and there will be a veteran village that's set up with organizations that service our veteran community from around the state.
Very cool.
Going to be very, very cool. We are really looking this year to try to promote that, to get people to come in. You don't have to have a ticket to come in. Anybody can come in. Lots of fun. Lots of cool military hardware. But what we're also and it's almost always a terrific game.
Oh, I've yet to, with exception of the last couple minutes of last year's game.
Fortunately, you and I both missed last year's game.
Which was every game that you and I have gone
6, 7, 8 years.
At least you and I have been to that many. And I will tell you right now, every time we've gone, it has been the most entertaining, especially the fourth quarter of the games have always turned out to be just something.
If you want to know who won, you're not leaving early.
Yes, that is not a game. The only year is when Army beat Houston. You could have left at halftime.
I was texting my boy Mark Corwin.
Yeah, that's the only game I think that we've ever attended
Cougar High
that you could have left early, and the outcome was determined very early in the game. That
might have been Houston's last really good football team too.
Yeah, because
Dana Holgerson's has not done well there. That's their new coach that they got from West Virginia.
Yeah, not good. But all the other, I mean, you remember the game when Air Force played Cal, and Jared Goff was the quarterback at Cal. What a game that was.
Yep.
I mean, it came down. I think that was almost the last play game where Cal ended up winning it. It was going back and forth.
It was crazy.
Yeah, I mean,
absolutely
and that fourth
crazy.
quarter, I think it was I think 3 touchdowns in a span of 4 minutes.
That was wild.
Yeah, it was
absolutely
a great game to go to. So like I said, Armed Forces right now, Army is tentatively penciled in and projected as the Service Academy representative. That could change. It is a little bit more interesting when you have a Service Academy attending the game. I've seen Air Force 2 or 3 times, Army 2 or 3 times, Navy once that I've seen. I don't know about
the Navy. The problem is Navy has
when they
were on that great run, they were getting better bowl bids.
Yep. Great program. Unfortunately, the last 2, 3 years, they've, I don't want to say fallen off, but they have not been as dominant as they have been.
You can say they've fallen off because they have. In fact, speaking of Navy, can we throw up our Navy football picture? I got to say this. I'm going to go back and talk about this year, the Navy football jerseys honor the dress blues of the Marine Corps.
That was only one game, though. They haven't worn them since. It was only that one game for 9/11.
I thought they were going to wear these for Army Navy.
No, they always weigh Army Navy. It's a special uniform that's surprise. That's the big. That's one of that's like on the code for the football top level secret. I mean, you need only a select committee knows what that uniform is going to look like, and they usually announce that just before the game. It's big time. Oh yeah, that's highly classified information. You do not have the clearance for that information yet.
I see how we're rolling.
I don't have that clear. I mean, that's big time information. But I will tell you.
And I just realized all of the officers, all of the Marines in the picture are officers.
Yep.
And they are all brand new second lieutenants because they're only wearing national defense medals. So they probably ordered them up from Quantico, from the basic school, to come up and look pretty. Pose for that picture.
Yep.
That's interesting. It just rolled across my mind. But they are patterned after the Marine dress blues.
Yep,
So
I
we had to
believe
throw that up.
But yeah, it'll be interesting what the Service Academy uniforms. Army usually bases off of a division that they do theirs on last couple of years. Navy has gone. In fact, last year's Navy's had actually a really cool one. It was something like with the ocean coming up on the helmet. It was really,
that was hideous.
I liked it. It was
You
cool.
would.
I thought it was pretty cool. Remember they're sponsored by Under Armour.
Yep.
So you got to remember there's some of that.
Kind of artsy fartsy over there at Under Armour.
And Army is sponsored by Nike.
There we go.
Yep.
There we go. I'm a little surprised to see Army still sponsored by Nike, but we're not going to go down that road.
It is what it is. But speaking of Navy, today.
Oh my gosh, I'd almost forgotten.
I'm almost afraid to say it because I know they're getting older, and we know how sensitive they can be. And we're talking about, and since we can say this, it's the Navy's birthday. They're 246 years old, so age may be a factor that they get a little sensitive on. We know the Navy. We're talking. We got to let them in on some of the inside talk. Before the show, Chuck and I were talking. It's like the Air Force kind of knows their place where they are. They've accepted their plot in life. Army and Marines, it's always a pissing contest amongst us. That's never going to change.
Never going to change.
It's just the way it is. But our Navy brothers and sisters, they just always seem so sensitive when we start,
They can get a little sensitive at times.
And don't get me wrong, we love you guys. But they do, it's just the way it is, and I don't understand that. But they do have some cool birthday pictures that we're giving for them.
That is from our friends over at Grunt Style.
Yep.
There are some neat pictures out there of them.
Now, I did a little Navy history over here.
Little Navy history.
Little knowledge warheads on foreheads.
Dropping warheads on foreheads. Okay.
You know what was on the first U.S. Navy ship's name?
I do not.
The USS Alligator.
Interesting.
Yes, I found out. Some of our initial frigates were the frigate United States, the frigate Continental, the frigate Chesapeake, the frigate Congress, the frigate President, and the frigate Constitution. The USS Constitution, the oldest active serving warship in the U.S. military.
Do you know the other claim to fame of the USS Constitution?
I know Old Ironside.
And the interesting thing about Old Ironside, it was made with a very heavy American wood, and I wish I could remember what wood it was, but I'm not a woody kind of guy. But literally, when the cannonballs would hit the side of it, they would bounce off. And
it was an extra layer. I think most of the ships, if I remember correctly, were 16 inches of wood, and Constitution's 18 inches thick of wood, which is also part of the reason why.
Actually, I have two trivia questions for you about the Constitution.
All right, bring it on.
Do you know the USS Constitution is still a U.S. Navy man of war?
Yeah, I just said that. They're the oldest active.
Well, you said it was the oldest. Oh,
yes,
oldest active, yes. But do you know its claim to fame today?
I know that only the top chiefs get to be assigned to it for like a 3-month duty period that sails it around.
They take it out. They take it out and sail it.
It's a very big honor in the Navy to be one of the chiefs.
It's sitting in Boston Harbor.
Yep. So what are their other?
It is the only man of war in the U.S. Navy that has sunk an enemy combatant.
Really? None of the ships did it in World War II?
None of them are still active.
Oh, active. Oh.
Active.
I missed that key word over there.
Very key word is active. It is. It's claim to fame. So
the Navy these days, I mean, we don't fire ship-to-ship battles anymore. It's a little
we got
bit.
rockets and stuff that'll go knock them out.
We send out.
We're about to get rail guns.
Yep.
But if an aircraft carrier sends an airplane, that is considered an extension of the aircraft carrier.
Really?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So would that be a sea-to-ship kill, technically?
It's an air-to-sea kill.
Air-to-sea kill? I mean, I'm curious what the Because if the aircraft is an extension of the carrier, would that still be a sea-to-sea kill?
I think they call it an air-to-sea kill, but
don't know.
it is credited.
If you're in the Navy, or better yet, an aviator, naval aviator, I know they get sensitive on being called pilots. You know, are you Marine pilot or Marine aviator?
I roll either way.
I don't know.
I'm not like my Navy brothers. I'm not too sensitive. Call me anything you want. Just don't call me
Jeff
late.
Hensley? We need to get. He was a Navy aviator, was he not?
He was F-14 driver.
So he would know whether it constitutes a.
Do you know I have spent more time deployed at sea aboard Navy ships than Jeff has?
Did not know that.
Yeah. He's a retired commander in the Navy. He's a commander, lieutenant commander.
We need to get one of our Navy brothers out there, or sisters, give us a call, and that is actually a great question. If a aircraft goes in...
Little warhead...
knowledge warheads on forehead.
Yeah, there we go. I have trouble saying it. The Battle of the Coral Sea was the first battle where neither combatant was within visual range of the other. They never saw each other.
That I did not know.
Yeah.
That's because a lot of the adaptation of aviation, correct?
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely. It was the unintended consequence of the attack on Pearl Harbor, and it was very odd that the carriers were at sea on maneuvers. We only had 3 carriers at the time. All 3 of them were at sea on maneuvers. They're out doing whatever Navy ships do. They were supposed to come in that evening. And directly as a result of that and the incredible ability, because one of the, and I always get them screwed up, it was the Yorktown was badly damaged in the Battle of Coral Sea. The Japanese at one point thought it was either sunk or damaged so badly it wouldn't return to the fray. So when Admiral Nimitz went out and led the Battle of Midway, it became the turning point of the war because they sunk 5 of the 6 Japanese aircraft carriers. And after that battle, the Japanese never successfully carried off another offensive naval engagement in the war.
Now, here's the question, and I don't know this. It's just, we only had 3 carriers at the time.
Yes.
Now, at the time, we technically were not at war officially prior to Pearl Harbor.
Correct.
We were supporting the British war effort unofficially with convoys,
yes,
arms.
that is correct.
Why did we not have a carrier supporting the fighter escorts of the planes to find the U-boats?
That would have made too much sense.
I mean, I'm just thinking, I'm an Army guy.
Yep.
I mean, I would be thinking now I do know the upper leadership of the Navy frowned upon the aircraft carrier because the battleship was the king of the sea.
The battleship was supposed to be the king. And that's the one thing I forgot to do. One of my absolute favorite pictures from when I was flying in the Marine Corps is me landing on the back of the USS New Jersey.
Now, I'm going to throw some Navy history on it, you.
Okay.
All right. Obviously, the aircraft carrier was the turning point, we could say, about World War II for the Pacific. What was one of the major key factors.
Absolutely.
When Japan was ultimately brought to surrender, why was the Missouri brought in as opposed to, there's a very famous quote.
I have no idea.
All right. John McCain's, both his fathers were, his grandfathers were admirals in the Navy. Mm-hmm. His grandfather stated, because of Pearl Harbor, MacArthur wanted an aircraft carrier there for them to sign the terms of surrender. His grandfather said, this war started on a battleship, it will end on a battleship, and the sister ship of that fleet was the Missouri. Yep. He brought it in, and that is why it was signed on the Missouri versus an aircraft carrier, is because he said this war started on a battleship, it will end on a battleship.
There we go.
Yep.
So, totally lost my train of thought. There were 4 battleships by the end of the war that survived the war: the New Jersey, the Iowa, the Missouri,
North
and
Carolina?
I can't remember the other.
Was it the Tar Heel?
I don't know. It might have
I
been,
think
but I
that's
don't know.
still
The
in-
Iowa is sitting next to the Queen Mary in Los Angeles.
Right.
The Missouri sits in Pearl Harbor,
Right.
next to the memorial for the USS Arizona.
Right.
The New Jersey actually sits in Philadelphia, or
Right.
maybe it's in Camden Yards. It may be in Camden Yards in New Jersey. The Iowa's in Los Angeles. Then there are some others.
Well, you got the Texas,
Texas is down in
Corpus,
no, it's down in the bayou.
Bayou.
It's down in the bayou next to the San Jacinto Monument.
Okay.
There are some beautiful
I
pictures.
know you
of
got the
that.
Tar Heel. That's still floating. Whether it's a
One of
museum.
them, the 4th one, is sitting.
You got Battleship Cove in Massachusetts, the USS Massachusetts out there.
I think those were the old World War I battleships.
Gotcha.
The USS Texas was at D-Day. It actually participated in D-Day. It was the only one of the World War I battleships that was at D-Day. So it participated both in World War I and World War II before it came home. The Missouri, the Iowa, and I think the New Jersey all participated in the fight in Korea.
Right.
And then the Missouri and the New Jersey fought off Vietnam.
And I believe one of which did fire maybe in the first Gulf War. I think maybe it might have been the Iowa
They fired Tomahawks.
Tomahawks.
They didn't fire their big 16-inch guns, but they were firing Tomahawks. So we still had battleships up into the early 90s on the rolls that were still sailing.
Yep.
So, and I'm sitting here this whole time, and I can't get. I keep seeing the village people singing "In the Navy." Oh, I'm sorry, Navy guys. I didn't mean to. Michael, if you're listening to the show, sorry about that, man. I had to do it. You knew I was going to do it. So we're having a lot of fun. 246 years, but I want to roll us out of this segment. So you will notice that our flag is set up in lineage order.
Yep. And
Of all the military.
please give them the reason why. I know you know.
So after the American Revolution, the U.S. Navy and the U.S. Marine Corps formally disbanded. The difference is the Marine Corps never changed their date that they said they started. And it became tradition. Whereas the Navy, as they came back online, used the new date, which is actually the October 13th date. It's today's date. So when they did that, they basically said, oh, okay, well, you just lost all of these years. And I didn't think about it for a long time, and now they're kind of pushing to take it back, because technically they were started on the 9th of November, 1775, whereas the Marine Corps was stood up on the 10th of November, 1775.
When did the Marine Corps fall under the Department of the Navy?
Always did.
Oh, that I did not know.
Yeah, they've always been a department of the Navy. Well, you know, it's the men's department.
Fair enough.
Little shout out to my father-in-law, John Baugh, who is one of my favorite squids and rust pickers. As the Great Santini so eloquently referred to. You ever seen that movie, The Great Santini?
Of course.
One
Been
of the
years.
fun, especially the opening scene. Unfortunately, it does get into the turbulent roles that fathers and sons take when sons get to be about 17, 18 years old. Excuse me, sorry.
Again, Chuck and I are going to do our best to
Oh my
make
gosh,
it.
this
These
is ridiculous.
allergies are terrible.
Allergies are terrible. So one thing about Texas, I'm going, where did this come from? Because I have never been a sufferer of allergies. So, but the one other story I want to leave this with. Do you know the first war we declared?
The First war declared under the Constitution.
That the U.S. government, that America as we know it, declared.
Well, the Revolutionary War wouldn't count because we weren't
Not a country yet.
I want to say the War of 1812.
Wrong. We declared war on the Barbary pirates.
Did not know.
It was one of the 6 times we have formally declared war. Hasn't happened all that often. But I tell this story for a reason.
Okay.
I really tell it for 2 reasons. From the very beginning, people have long talked about does the U.S. need to be the world's policeman?
Mm-hmm.
And, we can debate the merits of that one way or the other. That's all fine and good. But I point this out because the war with the Barbary pirates was fought by naval frigates.
Now, I do know the Navy spent a tremendous amount, Navy and Marines, fighting off piracy, in the Caribbean. That was a massive, operation, in the early
Major
days.
problem, but it wasn't as big a problem as it was off the Barbary coast, which is basically Libya, Morocco, that area of the Mediterranean, the southern edge of the Mediterranean. So the one thing that's critical about our Navy, that our Navy does, and they have done a pretty incredible job of it, is to keep our sea lanes open.
Yep.
Even today, that is critical. We see what's going on between China and Taiwan, and they're fighting over sea, and we think, oh, that's thousands of miles away. That doesn't impact us. Yeah, it does.
Oh, absolutely it does.
It impacts us in a huge way. I am very glad to see that we have loosened the restrictions on Japan and have allowed Japan to arm itself so it can start to participate in its own defense. Because this is critical. Our world continues to get smaller and smaller, and we are a global world.
100%. In fact, every corner of the world, every major ocean way has a naval or army commander in it.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. So we say this to close out this section as we honor our brothers, our sailors, brothers and sisters,
Yep.
Be politically correct.
Well, sailor would be both, wouldn't it?
Sailors, kind of both.
Universal.
Kind of like Marine.
Yep.
It's funny, I asked a buddy of mine's wife was also a Marine, and I kind of asked her because we referred to them as WMs, or women Marines. It's like, well, what do you want to be called? She didn't like it. She goes, Marine's good enough. And I was like, you know what? That's a great point. Marine is good enough. So to all of my friends in blue, we give you a shout out. Happy birthday. And I had to get the little dig as to why your flag will always sit behind. If you see the Navy flag in front of the Marine Corps flag, they are not following correct military protocol.
Nope.
So they aren't indeed.
Wow.
So we want to spend about 15 minutes. We're going to jump to our last segment because we were out last week. We mentioned earlier the bombing in Beirut were the first shots in the global war on terror, according to some. We want to talk about the first shots in the Texas Revolution. Can we throw up that come and take it flag? Now, this flag has become symbolic of the fight for Texas independence. But I want to talk a little bit. I want to get the backstory to this because in our politically correct society,
Right.
and this actually has relevance to the Battle of Midway as well. So one of the things, if you're going to write a book about the Battle of Midway, the Texas Revolution, these events that have been covered by hundreds and hundreds of people, volumes have been written about them, you're going to have to come up with a different slant for anybody to pay attention to you.
Sure.
One of the problems is that slant is usually based on misinterpreting the facts, presenting a false narrative. So there was a recent book about the Texas Revolution.
Which I'm sure you have an autographed copy.
I do not and never will.
then the book doesn't really exist. As far as if Chuck does not have a signed autographed copy, first edition, it's not a real book.
I don't
First
do
piece of false information he's putting out tonight.
absolutely. I don't do false narratives.
Yep.
And this book about the Texas Revolution tried to make the argument that the Texas Revolution was about slavery. And I've researched this.
I have never, and granted, I am not a native Texan, but I've been in Texas long enough to know. I think that's the first time I've ever even heard
And
that.
our whole woke culture latched on to that like they love to latch on to false narratives. And not that Texas didn't have a few slaves back then. They didn't have many. And it wasn't until after Texas became in fact, it wasn't until after Texas became a state that became big. At the time of the Texas Revolution, their whole logic was because Texas would eventually become the largest cotton growing state. I think it still is in the nation. But the problem with this is that most of the really good cotton fields were in the unsettled western Texas area around Lubbock in what they call the high desert. The settled areas of Texas were fairly rugged. You know, the areas around San Antonio and the hill country. This was not cotton farming country. Wasn't really even something the Fredericksburg settlers found out. Wasn't really even good farming country. Now, in the central part around Waco, yes, excellent farming. But South Texas, which is where most of the people were at the time, not good farming country at all. But certainly not cotton farming, which takes huge fields, very labor intensive. That just didn't work for Texas at the time. The same thing with the Battle of Midway. There was a guy who wrote a book, and his argument was, and we talked about this on a previous show, the Battle of Midway was insignificant. The U.S. would have won anyway, as we pushed our industrial might. But you got to look at the timing. One of the reasons I talked about the aircraft carriers was because the Japanese were conquering islands and building air bases on them to project air power.
We all know that. That's well documented.
Yeah. So Guadalcanal is just north of Australia.
Right.
And Australia was our last holdout, our last base of operations. Because if Australia had fallen, New Zealand would have literally fallen within a month or two. The Battle of Midway occurred in 1942. So assume, as the author of this book says, the Battle of Midway goes the other way. It wouldn't matter because eventually America's military might would have built up enough aircraft carriers and enough army. But the problem is that now we've lost Australia, we've lost New Zealand. We have no forward base from which to launch.
I mean, I could somewhat see his argument. Yes, that's fine. But to what extent?
Oh, it would have been bloody and it would have been ugly.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, yeah, you can technically kind of sort of make that case that he's, but how many more years? How many millions of lives? How many ships? I mean, the number would have been just.
No.
I don't even know if you could calculate what that number would have looked like.
Yeah.
You know, to have taken something like that.
Just so, and we've gotten a little off of the Battle of Gonzales and a little bit of Texas history, but it's the new thing now are false narratives. And there's another book about my friend Woody Williams that I'm not even going to go into. That's just
we know Woody's demand. Which, by
narratives.
The way, happy belated birthday, Woody.
Happy birthday, Woody! I'm going to see him for breakfast tomorrow morning. That's going to be awesome. I always love seeing Woody. He's 98 years old. He's still going strong, but his family, due to COVID, is cutting back on his travel schedule heavily.
Which totally 100% understandable.
So let me get us back on topic. But false narratives tend to be a pet peeve of mine. Sorry about that. Let's talk about what was going on in Mexico that really led to the Texas Revolution. What most people don't understand was that Santa Anna
Close enough.
saw himself as the Saddam Hussein of his day.
Mm-hmm.
He saw himself as the Napoleon of the New World. That, as far from being true as anything could be possible. But what had happened in 1824, the Mexicans had thrown off, and Santa Anna had led that fight, had thrown off the Spanish and kicked the Spanish out of their country. They wrote a constitution that would protect the people and protect the states, much like the U.S. Constitution. It's quite popular. It's been modeled quite a few times. It's absolutely a brilliant document. Santa Anna eventually wound up getting elected president, and no sooner does he take office, but he basically takes over military dictatorial power and tears up the Constitution. So the real fight, and if we could throw the picture up with the cannon right quick, the real fight and the whole attitude behind come and take it is the Mexican army had given the Texans, to ward off Indians, this very small cannon. Now, most cannons like that are 6-8 feet long, and they're big and they're heavy. This cannon is tiny. It is an oversized shotgun. And the only thing it really was going to do is scare people.
Yep.
It really wasn't a very effective military weapon, but in 1835, the Mexican commander at the garrison in San Antonio demanded the cannon be returned. And he rode out with his troop of cavalry carrying their lances. And basically the Texans had put together this very cheaply done flag, and they're lined up around their cannon and basically said, come and take it. And the Texans basically kicked the Mexicans' butts. Santa Anna was outraged. And the interesting thing is, while there was some talk of succeeding for Mexico at this point in time, things really didn't get galvanized until two things happened. One, the battle at, when they tried to force it back.
Right.
The Texicans did, in fact, seize the garrison, San Antonio. Santa Anna put together an army. Now, another fun point. Texas was hardly the only state that was rebelling against Santa
Mexico, Arizona.
Well, actually, I was talking about the Veracruz. I was talking about Chihuahua. I was talking about the Mexican states. Arizona and New Mexico were largely unsettled at this point in time. But and Santa Anna put these rebellions down brutally. He was
not a nice guy.
No, not a nice guy at all. Absolutely brutal dictator. But this would, in fact, be the first shots of the Texas Revolution. And there's an interesting story, and I actually have a friend of mine who has brought me a couple pieces of bark. There was a tree under which Sam Houston had come west, originally to try to support the garrison at the Alamo, but it would fall. And under this huge oak tree, the Texas oak, he would start a brilliant, and we'll talk about this more in the spring because it was very controversial at the time, actually was a brilliant tactical maneuver. And what he did is he went scorched earth, so the Mexican army had nothing to eat. And he retreated all the way from just south of San Antonio, just north of San Antonio, I beg your pardon, all the way, as we were talking about before, to San Jacinto, which is down by Houston. It's in a bayou on the coast. And he would stretch out Santa Anna's supply lines. Nobody really understood what he was doing. The whole way, harassing the Mexican army. They would set up an ambush. and they get 10, 12 people with horses, and they would fire a volley, maybe two, at the Mexicans, and then they'd run away. They would continue east. But the Mexican army was forced to deploy and attack this position because they didn't really know who was there. And then they had to regroup. There was one river. Believe it or not, we have rivers in Texas. And so Sam Houston ordered, when this last group came across, to burn the ferries.
Yes, I do remember that. And that's why
continuing to stall Santa Ana and stretch out his supply lines. And then it took us all of 18 minutes to rout Santa Ana, avenge the Alamo, avenge Goliad. And these are stories we'll get into in more depth as we get into the spring. And we will talk about this. It'll be a little bit of a lesson in Texas history. But Come and Take It is basically a statement. One, you gave us the cannon, we're not giving it back. But two, we agreed to be Mexican citizens under the Mexican Constitution of 1824. Now you've torn it up. This isn't right. And Americans, because there were a lot of Americans involved, a lot of other people too, but the greatness of America has always been this seeking freedom as opposed to servitude. We are not a nation of servants. And it's something, quite frankly, we need to get back to a little more. Because it's an amazing nation. It is the shining city on the hill. And we are the beacon of freedom, as Reagan said, for the rest of the world.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to hit you up before we leave on a trivia question.
Go ahead.
All right. How many flags flew over Texas?
They call it 6.
How many were there?
It kind of depends on how you count them.
There were 6 all through Texas, with the exception of one area. Galveston, there were 7. And the only reason why I know that is because of Juneteenth. They let us know that Galveston had its own flag over them, so they're the only part of Texas that has 7 flags, while the rest of Texas has 6.
Interesting.
Just thought that was a little Texas trivia to throw out there. Well, hope you all enjoyed the show. We know we did, because we got to talk a lot about football. Recapping our Navy brother and sister sailors out there. Happy birthday. And we will see you guys next week. Hopefully Chuck and I will still be kicking at that point. It's
if we're not here,
you know why.
Check us out in the hospital.
All righty. Hoorah, hoorah. See you next week.